And from?
Williston.
Yep, okay. And then James?
I'm James Saunders, from board member from Plainfield.
Okay, welcome everybody. And then the other members of the library who are here.
There's Maxie.
Good morning. Morning.
Oh, there's Maxie. Okay.
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
And
We're doing a roll call, Maxie. I'm Catherine Delnau. I'm the state librarian and secretary to the board.
okay, so Maxie, introduce yourself, say where you're from.
Maxie Ewens, former library director of the Fletcher Free Library in Burlington. Now live in Charlotte.
Okay, and Charlotte. Okay, that's everybody. And now we're going around the library. So we have Kathy, and I heard Josh and the rest. You just say your name.
Hi, I'm Josh Muse. I'm with the Department of Libraries.
Okay.
Hi, I'm
Well,
Gina. Oh,
Okay. Sorry.
sorry.
Hi, I'm April Shaw, and I'm at the Department of Libraries.
Hi, I'm Gina Harubin, and I'm the executive assistant to Kathy at the Department of Libraries.
Jeanette Schaefer, Assistant State Librarian for Library Advancement.
Anybody else? Okay, welcome everybody. The next, are there any guests, any outside folks? So,
I don't,
I'm sorry, yes?
I was just going to say, Tom, I don't believe that there are any others on the call who haven't introduced themselves.
Okay, yeah. So the next thing is that, are there any adjustments, changes to the agenda?
I would, this is Linda, I would like to find out a little bit more about where we are in terms of recruiting new board members.
Okay, and we'll do that, and Kathy, and put it in, if you just doing your
I can
report,
incorporate
that
that
would be
into the
good.
report. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
would be good.
Thank you.
Squeeze it in there. Okay, and there are no members of the public to speak? Okay, so the next thing we go is we turn it over to Kathy for the report. Oh, no, sorry, minutes. Approval of the minutes of the last board meeting. I just read them again. I didn't see any changes. I thought they were pretty well represented what was happening there.
Hello, this is Bruce. Just a couple changes.
Okay,
First of all, I like the minutes. They're very comprehensive, which I think is important. They don't need to be a verbatim, thing, but comprehension is good and it establishes a history. So I appreciate it. On page 3, about the third paragraph down, I think board members asked whether it was a requirement. I had trouble with the last sentence. The board secretary read the board's geographic naming procedure and confirmed that while the board strongly encourages the petitioner to include written support for the proposal from Native American tribes and others, because local use and acceptance of a name is important, that state statute does not state that such these written letters of support are required. And I was wondering if it would sound better if it was worded that state statute does not state that such written support is required. I don't know, it just was confusing to me.
okay, so that was just.
As the board secretary, I agree with you, Bruce.
Oh.
So thank you for rephrasing
Okay.
that. It's confusing to say state twice, and your suggested wording is much preferable. Thank you.
Okay, and then page 4, I think the fourth paragraph or sentence down, whatever. The board secretary shared that the next step will be noticing per the board's procedure, and that the official name in Vermont is now Bumblebee Brook. Noticing who? Who are we noticing about this?
Or notifying.
we're notifying that big, long list of folks.
Okay,
We call it, let me look at the, we could look at the geographic naming document to see if there's a better way to,
Because there's like 25 different places you have to notify.
there
Okay,
are,
just-
and it's at the very, it's on the last page. So why don't we change that to, the next step will be to issue a letter announcing the board's naming decision to, per the geographic names procedure.
yep, that sounds good to
Gotcha.
me.
Yeah,
And then
that's fine.
One other little thing, sorry to take people's time, so this
No, that's why it's on the agenda, Bruce.
one of my bugaboos. So on page 5, the second paragraph under the bold heading, update from Board of Libraries, the third line down, to appoint members of the Vermont Board of Library. So I would say Vermont Board of Libraries, that's all.
I'm sorry, Bruce,
Okay.
where was that?
It was on page 5.
Yeah.
Let me get to page 5. The second paragraph under the bolded heading, update from Board of Libraries Recruitment Committee. I had in the third, basically the first sentence was Catherine Denale provided classification that Tracy Delude, appointments director in the governor's office, comma, I guess what you put, has confirmed that it's the governor's responsibility to appoint members of the Vermont Board of Library. And I would just change it, libraries, that's all.
Yes,
Just-
thank you. Thank
Just
you.
a little nit, and I will be silent, at least for the rest of the minutes. Thank you.
Kathy, just to make this really simple, and I'm Bruce's first point about what the state statute requires in regard to, you can just take out in regard to consulting with Native American tribes, you can just take out the word these. You can just take out the word such. That state statute does not state that these written letters of support are required. Just take out the word such, and it works. This is on page 3, the 1, 2, 3, fourth full paragraph at the end of it.
I see what you're saying. That sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, I need a motion to approve with the 3 changes that were noted.
This is Deb. I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second, Linda.
Okay, in that case, any addition, corrections? Motion, if not, all in favor, aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions or negatives? Okay, for that, then we go into Kathy's report on the library. And the one thing, and Kathy, say how you want it done. Because one thing I wanted, we have 2 responsibilities. One is naming, geographic naming, and the other is advising the state librarian, and that's just advice. She can take it or leave it, whichever case. But I don't. We've been sort of bottled up with the naming, with Negro Brook, and then all these, and now we're getting the procedure down, and we don't have any this month. So therefore, wanted to make sure that the board members got a chance to think about it, and any advice or any help that we can provide to the state librarian. So with that, take it away, Kathy.
Well, I appreciate the advisory role, and I appreciate that at this meeting, we actually have time for me to solicit your advice on a number of topics that are important to the work that we're doing here in the Department of Libraries. I want to apologize for not getting the written report out to you sooner. I think you can probably tell from our report that we've been a little bit busy here at the Department of Libraries. And most recently, we had the Vermont Library Conference, which I share about on the second and third page of the report. I want to mention that there is going to be a revised report because I omitted a key board member. Our vice chair was there at the conference. So we saw both Maxie and Adrian at the conference. The conference was really well attended. It was a lot of fun to see everyone. Last year there had been an unconference, but this one was programmed a lot more, and there were many presenters. And so I've shared some details about how the department was involved in that. But the department had so many different presentations to do that preparing all of the documents and getting everything together. It actually was on Easter Sunday at about 8 o'clock that I sat down to write the state librarian's report. So I was really trying to get it out to you because we've also in the department been doing a lot of ARPA outreach. Yesterday, Tom McMurdo and I were on the road. We went down to Springfield and we did a panel discussion there with members of the administration and other agencies. And I'm sorry, Agency of Administration and other agencies. And then we visited the Springfield Library, and then we moved over to Rochester, and then we visited the Rochester Library. So it's been a busy week. But I do hope that some of you had the chance to read the report. I just want to hit on a couple of key things that we're doing right now that are wrapping up. One of them is the annual public library survey. That is a survey that every state does, and that it's overseen nationally by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, which is one of our key funding sources. Interestingly, the grants to states program, which we benefit from significantly, makes up about a third of our annual operating budget at the department. It's not required that libraries respond to this survey in order to receive money through grants from states. Some state libraries will tell them that, but on IMLS's side, the public library survey and the grants to states programs are kind of two separate creatures. So we here in Vermont, we do a lot of encouraging, a lot of cajoling, a lot of reminding. The heavy lifting is done by Josh Muse, who you see on the screen there. So I just want to share some appreciation for Josh and the huge effort that he puts into coordinating that survey every year. And this year he's offering additional support to folks. We made some changes to the questions to align them better with the national set of questions, so that they would be more readily, so the data would be able to be evaluated more readily as compared with other states. We felt that that was an important change to make. Vermont had used some of its own unique language because, to be frank, the national questions are a little confusing. Josh is still doing the heavy lifting of explaining what the national questions mean to folks, and he did a nice webinar for everyone. And we ended up extending the deadline until, I believe, the 15th of April, which is later. It's coming right up. And then Josh's hard work begins. This is the last set of data that's going to be able to be used in the working group study. And so some of the data sets that we have looked at over the years will need to be updated so that they can be incorporated in that. There is IMLS data that's available online. I've put links to these resources in the report. IMLS lags by about 2 years. So you won't be able to see this 2022, the ranking lists of who has the most collections per capita, who has the most libraries per capita. You won't be able to see our 2022 data until probably 2024. So there's always a bit of a lag in compiling those lists. So just be aware of that. And this data that we were receiving from folks, that we're currently receiving from folks, is for 2022. So the 2023 PLS in Vermont is the 2022 data. Another thing that we've been busy with recently is public library trustee training. You may be aware that our former governance consultant has left the department, and we're in the recruitment process for that position. Joy Warland, who is our small and rural consultant and our continuing education consultant, jumped in and hosted a really nice training for library trustees. It struck us that we believe we have at least 1,000 trustees here in Vermont supporting public libraries. If each library board has at least 5 board members, and we do know some have more than 5, then we very quickly get up into the 1,000 human range. And of course, those folks are elected in some situations or they're appointed, and then they require some training. So we like to do an overview for them, and Joy did a really nice job this year of preparing and delivering the training for trustees. And she's always just really easy to reach out to and to connect with when people have questions. And she usually works really closely with that other consultant. It had been called the governance consultant. We've renamed it the operations consultant. And they'll still be supporting trustees, but also taking on some support roles with our facilities and really kind of owning that piece of library operations. So I really appreciate that Joy jumped in and did this training and did such a nice job with it, and that she's such a team player, because when we're down a person, we still have trustees that we need to support. So Joy jumped in there, as did Jeanette, who was available to answer questions and has been stepping in to help folks while we have that key vacancy. Our consultants have been so busy, and I want to give a big shout out to Jonathan Clark. You may know that he is our youth services consultant, and Jonathan does a lot to support the work of the Red Clover, the Vermont Golden Dome, and the Green Mountain Book Award committees. So those are the 3 youth book award committees. If you go to the department's homepage right now, you'll see that one of our spotlights, that the image that changes out, is really highlighting that right now our nomination period is open for the Vermont Book Awards. There is so much effort and energy that goes into creating those nomination lists, and it involves librarians throughout the state, school and public librarians who serve youth, reading the books and selecting the ones that they feel are going to be good candidates for the list, and books that the kids will really enjoy reading, but also well-written books and high-quality books. And Jonathan organizes their meetings and sends them the copies to review. And Lily Talbot, who's in our team, also does a lot to support that work. So we really just appreciate that effort that they make. And Vance, who's in our team, has also stepped in to help while Lily's position was vacant this year. Last year, we saw nearly 18,000 votes cast by youth in Vermont's schools. And we really are excited to keep that participation high this year. And we are doing a lot to get the word out about it. I want to just mention too, if you go to the department's webpage, this didn't make it into the report, but we do also have the Vermont Book Award that is not the youth one, the award for adult materials published by Vermont authors that the department hosts in cooperation with Vermont Humanities and Vermont College of Fine Arts. And the nominees have been shared. I was driving to work and heard an NPR story, not an NPR, a Vermont Public story on the radio about the Vermont Book Award. And I know that Jeanette and her team are really involved in that effort. So I want to thank them for that high profile work that they do. It's really related to keeping libraries front of mind when we think about good literature. It's about promoting the writers in our state. There are different categories. There's the nonfiction, the poetry, the fiction, and now there's even a youth award that is voted on. And there will be an event that takes place on, trying to remember.
May 6th, Kathy.
Oops, thank you. Yeah, May 6th. On the evening of May 6th, there will be an awards reception, and we're excited to co-host that. And then the final thing I just wanted to share with you is that we have closed out our spending of the ARPA funds that we received through the Institute of Museum and Library Services. I believe we got about $2.1 million in ARPA funding that we were allocated directly from IMLS to grant out in our state to support pandemic responses in libraries. And I cannot say enough about the hard work that Jeanette coordinated with our whole team. And she and Tom McMurdo have just been plugging away at this from before I got here. They've been consistently just making sure that we used every last one of those dollars. I want to thank Sam Kelly, who was a temp who worked in our department. She's actually April Shaw's mom, but she was a retired state worker and she was looking for something to do. And we really benefited from her amazing skills. She helped us run reports and say, hey, there are a few dollars over here left. We need to, this is what you've spent. And in the past couple of weeks, the spending closeout was actually on the 31st of March, and we didn't want to leave any federal dollars on the table. So we started just buying. We had a plan that at the end we would support our collections, and particularly our Palace app collections and our physical materials collections. And one thing that we're really excited about, the Palace app, which you may have seen a press release about recently, the Palace app provides Vermonters with a core collection of evergreen, always available titles. These are titles that there's no limit to how long we get to have them in our e-collection, our ebook and e-audiobook collection. So we specifically purchased, Tom McMurdo specifically selected, he and the folks working on collections, titles that wouldn't expire in 3 years or 10 years. Specifically got core titles, classic titles that we would have continual access to through Vermont's Palace app. So those ebooks and e-audiobooks, they serve as the basis of a core collection, and then your local library adds on, maybe they'll get some bestsellers in addition to those materials, or they'll bulk up their collections with materials that may have a shorter duration that the license is for. One thing that was really exciting to us was that we were able to use these funds to increase the size of our non-English book collection. The working group on the status of libraries in Vermont is aware that, we've been hearing from the community that it's really difficult to select materials in languages that you don't read, which that just seems to make some intuitive sense, right? It's hard to select a book if you cannot actually read the words on the page. And it's hard to maintain those collections. And so what we did in the department is that we selected more than 1,000 items in non-English languages that can be accessed all throughout the state, including more than 200 books in Arabic, 61 books in Farsi, 321 French books, 161 Spanish books, 62 Ukrainian books, 104 Urdu books, and 83 Vietnamese books. So we really tried to gather materials in some of the languages that are most needed in our state based on the populations that we serve, of folks who are refugees coming to Vermont, or newcomers to Vermont for other reasons. And this is part of our general approach to beef up our shared collections and shared resources so that we can support local libraries in providing service to people that they might not otherwise be able to afford to provide or have the expertise to provide. I know that there was a request for a board recruitment update. The opportunity for folks to express interest in serving on the board was open throughout the month of March. From what I understand, the governor's office has received 7 interested applicants. They come from around the state. We have people from Southern Vermont. We have people from the Northeast Kingdom. We have names that seem to be showing that people are different genders, although I don't know exactly the mix. You can never tell from a name, but Tom, Frank, and I plan to review those and make a recommendation to the governor's office staff, and hope that we will have some news about replacement board members for our folks who have termed out already or who will term out soon. Relief is in sight for those of you who have been just soldiering on for all this time on the board. I want to just share my appreciation. I want to say that it was a little confusing to learn how to replace board members and what the process is. And now we know how to do it. We could potentially start it earlier in advance of somebody's timing out. But with everything going on in the department, I have certainly benefited from the continuity of service from board members who stayed on an additional year. So thank you. Thank you for serving in that way and supporting me in that way. And
I
if you
will
think
say
you're
we have-
really
yes.
done with me, you probably won't be. I'll still probably reach out to you on occasion and ask your opinion.
There are seven, we have 3 vacancies. And we have 7 applicants. So what
Yeah,
a
we're in a
unique
good
situation.
We're in a good situation. Oh, I do want to share one other thing that that I think you may be interested in, but I didn't put it in the report. The department has been called in for budget testimony to both House appropriations and Senate appropriations. I think both of those conversations with the appropriations committees went well. One of them was on April 4th. So just to add to everything that's been going on in the past week with the conference and all of that, there was budget testimony to Senate appropriations last week. And the House appropriations, we had heard from them much earlier, back in mid-March, March 22nd. So they both seemed very positive about the library, the Department of Libraries and the work that we're doing. They had a lot of good questions that they asked. I want to thank Tom and Jeanette for coming to support me in those conversations. It's always good to see them nodding that I've gotten it right. I'm still learning, and it was my first rodeo with both of those groups. So I really appreciated the support that they provided. And I expect that both committees seem aware that our budget is relatively small and very important to the community in Vermont that we serve. And so they didn't make any signals about doing anything besides just leaving it as is. They both seemed happy to see that we were dedicating, really calling out a specific budget line for the collections that we provide, the physical collections for the correctional facilities and the psychiatric institutions and the veterans home. That those institutional collections, we are dedicating $36,000 of our collection for that specific resource so that we make a firm commitment to continue with that key group of Vermonters who we serve. And I will
Kathy, was
stop
that?
there.
Whoops. Quick
Go,
question.
Maxine.
Was that the Education Committee?
No, that was House Appropriations is the one that I visited last week,
Okay.
and Senate. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Senate Appropriations was last week, and House Appropriations we visited back in March. I did also go in front of Senate Education last month, I think, related to the working group, and I'll be in front of House Education tomorrow, I believe, related to the working group, but I'll share that information in the working group update.
Okay, any other questions so far or
Yeah,
comments?
This is Bruce. Can you hear me?
Yep. Got you, Bruce.
My wife assures me that you can buy a can at a grocery store of some meat that's past the expiration date and it's still edible. So I'm well past my expiration date here. So I'm glad I've been able to be of some help. Yeah, I have a number of questions and perhaps this could be my last meeting, so I better get them in. First of all, I don't think we've ever had 7 applicants for the board in the past. So I don't know the reason for it, but I think that's great. I don't know the quality of the applicants, but you start with numbers and you see where you go from there. So that's great. First of all, you redesigned the web page, didn't you? And I liked it. Okay, so I was able to find some things there, and I want to compliment everybody that contributed to that. It was a step in the right direction, and congratulations. You talked, Kathy, about the return for the public library survey. You've extended the date until April 15th. What's the progress on returns to date? Do you have any idea?
I think Josh may be the best person to answer that question because he administers that.
Hi there. I think we have roughly, I took a quick look and it looked like we had roughly a third are in so far, which is not out of the norm. They tend to come in near the end is reality. So I think it's pretty typical so far.
I'm just wondering why Vermont, I mean, 84%, as you said in your report, Kathy, would normally be looked at as pretty good, but we're towards the bottom of the list. What, any speculation as to why?
I have an idea, and I'll see if Josh nods his head or looks dismayed as I say it, because he's sort of our expert on this data set and collection of it. I think that it's very possible that some of Vermont's libraries are so small and open so few hours and have such small staffing that it feels very overwhelming for people to even check their email and gather the data that they need. We typically see about 146 responses is my sense. And that's what we see not just in response to the survey, but also in response to free money. So right now we are issuing the summer reading grants and we have 150 responses. We did all this extra outreach and all this different pushing. And we have Lily, who's just an amazing public relations person getting the word out about things. And we budged the needle a tiny bit for a free grant of $300. So if we're giving away free money for youth services programming, and we're seeing 150 responses. Imagine when there's probably 2 or 3 or 5 hours of work that you need to do before you to gather the data before you can enter it. I think that it's largely because of a capacity issue at the small libraries. I want to share one other thing. It's not apples to apples. When you look at the survey, and I mentioned we've tried to align our questions with the national survey data. When you're looking at a state like Hawaii, they have one public library. Now, that's because their state library is their public library system. Every public library staff member who works at a public library on any of the islands in Hawaii reports up through the chain of command to the state librarian. So they have complete authority over every single one of their small libraries in a way that ours is the opposite. I think of Hawaii as the opposite. We have no direct authority. We can only ask. Now, I mentioned some states do also pretend that it's tied. They add a requirement, basically, for granting out the Grants to States program. The state applies a requirement that people fill out that survey in order to get the Grants to States money through the department that they would grant out, or other grants from the Department of Libraries. We don't have state aid in a way that some other libraries do, and I think that other state library administrative agencies do, and I think that that also plays into it. But there are states that do just what we do, and they have a higher rate of return, but perhaps they have a smaller number of libraries and more of a centralized county-wide or regional system in place.
Thank you for that. Just one follow-up. I know Maxie's got a question and I'll have more later. Speaking of smallness, you mentioned the ARPA funds, and if I remember correctly, we had a minimum amount that could be offered to somebody, so small libraries could apply. I'm just, if I'm correct, how did that go? How many were at the minimum? Any idea?
Jeanette Schaefer is on the call and she may be able to provide that answer, but I think it's around for the ARPA money when we used the formula and we granted out funds to them through the 2 rounds of ARPA funding. I think it was in that same 140 to 150 range.
Yeah, and as far as the proportion of the smaller libraries that applied, I think it was 2/3 that had that got the minimum amount approximately, and I can get those exact numbers and get them out to the board.
Thanks. I was just interested. I thought that was a wonderful thing, a wonderful idea to set that kind of minimum, small library minimum. Great idea. I just wanted to see how it went, and I'll keep quiet for a little while.
While Jeanette's still on the screen, I want to call her back on to extend an invitation to you all. So Jeanette is our Vermont Book Awards coordinator for the department's role in the three-way partnership, and she just mentioned something to me in the chat. So I'm going to offer the mic to Jeanette for just a second.
Yep, thank you. So as Kathy has mentioned, the book award reception, it's a dessert reception, happens on May 6th, which is a Saturday, 7 p.m. at the Vermont College of Fine Arts in the Lumnix Hall there, which is the beautiful building that used to be the gym at the top of the hill there. And if you would like to join, please let me know. I can put my email in the chat, but I think all of you know how to get in touch with me. We have a few tickets that we could offer up as well. And it's a nice little celebration to just mingle with authors and sort of a group of people who really contribute to the literary landscape in Vermont. So please let me know if you'd like to attend and we can get you some tickets.
And each of the authors, oh, sorry, Bruce.
No, I don't know if I'm going to get this right. Ich reise nach Deutschland in May, so I won't be here. I'll be in Germany. And did I get that right? I'm trying to learn German.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. I won't be there, but I want to let you know. So.
I have a comment.
I think Linda's hand is up and then James's right now. So
I am up too.
Okay.
Okay, Maxie, you go first. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm going to go back to VLA. I want to congratulate Kathy for being absolutely everywhere. She produced, she had workshops. It was a fabulous conference with lots and lots of topics, and Adrian probably can comment to that one as well. I really enjoyed it. I stayed from the beginning to the bitter end, which was Jason, who came, and Bruce knows that, who came to give the keynote address in the evening. So it was a really good conference, and I'm sure the working group will benefit from that conference as well. My only problem was, and I told the conference committee, and Tom knows, I now walk with a cane, and I had real trouble getting from venue to venue because it was up and down, and could have been, the reception could have been more cheerful. But I also want to thank Jeanette for carrying my lunch plate. So it was a great conference, and my only caveat was physical access.
And wonderful to combine with the school libraries as well, to have a joint conference. I don't know if that's happened before or not in the history, but, and also some academic librarians, I believe, attended as well, but it was a little bit hard to know who was there because it was so spread out. And so accessibility, certainly a challenge, and also interacting with different people. There were some people that I asked afterwards if they were there, and we never crossed paths.
Yeah, and I never saw you, Adrian.
Case in point. Yeah. And it could be that the tracks that people were on, and there could be different ways that the conference could be designed. The school librarians had a pretty heavy 2 sessions back to back, and perhaps on another day or time that there could be more of a crossover of the expertise and energy between the 2 different groups that had something different to offer. So.
I would just recommend with this feedback, the department didn't actually, we were not included in the planning committee. So I would recommend folks give that. I can pass the feedback to the conference coordinator, but I think as conference attendees, I would recommend that you do that. I want to be sure that we don't lose track of Linda, whose hand was up for a
Yeah,
really long
Linda
time,
James,
and then James's.
James. Yep.
Thank you. Actually, I was trying to lower my hand a number of times there because Bruce asked my question and it was answered. Thank you very much.
Don't have any other questions then, Linda? Okay.
Well, I'll try to make one up, but it's all right.
No, that's okay.
Give me some time.
James.
I have
Go ahead.
one more comment, may I?
Oh, sure.
Yes, yes.
Did write back to the conference committee, Kathy, and gave him my input. I also feel that, you know, this conference center is really dreary. So why not have for the raffle, the cat in the hat, taking off the hat, and put your raffle ticket in that? Or have somebody like Pippi Longstocking escort somebody who walks with a cane. It could have just been a lot lighter. I think it would have made people happier.
These are a bunch of librarians when you expect. No.
Oh, come on. No.
Okay, James.
Oh, yeah, I had a couple of questions, or one question and then another point. I don't know however you want to put that. But one was, and maybe Janet would be the one to answer this question, but the Vermont College of Fine Arts is the location for the May 6th event. And they evidently had a role in the coming up with the book awards. And I'm wondering, if I'm not mistaken, Vermont College of Fine Arts is not going to exist here anymore. And are they going to continue to be involved in some way or another in their new, I guess, identity? I think it's somewhere in another state. And if they're not going to be involved, is there another school that's going to sort of take up their weight in this annual book award project? That's one question that I had. And I guess it's directed toward either Catherine or Janet.
I'll have Jeanette answer that one because I think she knows.
I apologize, Jeanette.
I guess I can answer your question first and then your second question. So right now, the plan is, as far as we know, for VCFA's administration to remain in Montpelier. And for the time being, we are assuming, so the partners are the Vermont Humanities, the department, and then Vermont College of Fine Arts. And they're the ones who came up with this award. You're right, James. So for the time being, we are assuming that we will keep going in this partnership as it stands right now. They are funding a coordinator. VCFA is funding a coordinator to do all of the organizing of the judges and getting books to the people, which we're helping with as well. So it's right now is the status quo, but I'm not sure what their long-term plans are. And I think Humanities is very interested in keeping the award going. And we'll just have to see if there's another partner that we could involve in that. But for the time being, we're looking at just assuming it is how it is.
Okay. And I had another question that I had was with regard, I remember Catherine saying, mentioning Hawaii, and they could kind of, there's a state library that kind of can issue down instructions there, and we're not like that. She said the exact opposite. We can only ask. And I'm wondering with regard to what's going on as far as Vermont State University, the combination of other colleges, now that I don't know where it stands there in terms of them getting rid of all of their physical books, but I'm just sort of wondering, do we, even though we can't tell them what to do, should we as a board or the libraries, the state library itself, provide a recommendation? And the other thing, just out of personal selfishness, if they're really going to get rid of all these books, I'm sure that there's some incredibly valuable books that they're going to get rid of. Is there going to be some massive sale that the public can have access to? Because some of them are just, I think, going to be just invaluable over the, even though I guess Vermont State University wants to get rid of them. I think there probably is some gems in there. Is there some kind of, I don't have any information at all on that, but I'm just wondering, are we going to do, should we make a statement and can we get information on what they're going to do with the books?
These are excellent questions, James. I know that let me try to take piece by piece, if I can. So the Department of Libraries was not consulted by the state colleges as they developed their plan. And we learned about it a little bit through the grapevine, maybe 12 or so hours in advance of the news stories that folks read. But the official word that we received of it was the same as you received as members of the public. I have tried to learn more information about the plan, and I have not been, no one has shared anything more detailed than what you as members of the public would see. So, you know, the department sort of, when we think of what the authority or the powers of the department are, our statute reflects that we may consult. We serve in a consulting role to libraries of all types throughout the state, but we cannot force libraries throughout the state, either public, school, or academic, or special libraries, to engage us in that way. We don't have any authority over their budgets. They report to their own board of the colleges and universities. So there is I think for some members of the public and some members of the library community, there was some confusion that they had, and they started trying to lobby me by email to do something about this. And it's a little bit of a challenge because it's not a decision that is in the department's purview to make. It is in our purview to evaluate their plan and to say to the legislature, this would impact us or this would not impact us. I have been asked some questions about it by the Senate Committee on Education. When I went in to talk about the working group, they asked some questions. I shared with the Senate Committee on Education that I have concerns about interlibrary loan, because while Vermont State Colleges aren't the biggest lender of materials, they do contribute right now to physical interlibrary loan. And if they do not provide that service to Vermont libraries, then they would typically not be able to get materials from Vermont libraries. So there are students who are Vermonters and who use Vermont library services. And so in that way, their students and their faculty are my concern, because I care, my role is to think about library services statewide. Their students wouldn't be able to get an interlibrary loan material of a book. And then also at a public library or a school library or at another academic library, their collections will be removed from the interlibrary circulating materials. So I did share that with the Senate Committee on Education when asked. I have not been called in for testimony. They know I am the state librarian, so I believe that they know that I'm here if they wish to interact. The administration does not have a specific stance on this, and so the department cannot have a specific stance on this. As the Board of Libraries, it's up to you all to decide if you have a stance on it. You don't report to me either, so my sense is that you could decide you wanted to say something, or you could decide not to say anything. I think that that's a discussion for you all. I don't know if that answered the question. And James, as far as the plan for the books, I still have not seen a plan for the books and would be curious. I still am curious to see the plan for the books. To my knowledge, I've had 2 meetings with staff of Vermont State Colleges, one with people from the Chancellor's office very early on, who did not really have very much information. And so then Jeanette and Tom and I met with the Dean of Libraries, who also did not have very much information. Maybe a week or so later, they said that they did not have a written plan. We were offering help in ensuring that libraries would be able to kind of review collection lists and see if they wanted materials. We have not heard anything from them.
It's interesting. I know it's an improper analogy, but I just think of things like the civil rights movement or the Vietnam War protests. I know it's not the exact good analogy, but I see that a lot of young people out there who are speaking their mind and taking all these risks, and they say things like they think there's a war, and a lot of them believe that it's just kind of the beginning of doing away with libraries, but they're the ones that got divorced. Meanwhile, it seems like a lot of the people who have the power and in charge are not really forthcoming about even if they're going to. I get a sense they might have to change their mind because that's what young people do. They don't give up until they see the right thing being done. So I'm just wondering, as I look at it that way, I don't know. I might write an editorial to a newspaper. I don't know what good that'll do, but just to express my own personal opinion about things. I remember Howard Frank Moshe, the late Vermont author. He said that was one of his big fears too. We sort of, I guess, cried a little bit over the thought that maybe eventually books will be done away with completely. And those that sort of point out my feelings a little bit. Sorry.
I do want to share that when I was in front of, and I want to say first, James, I'm very interested in your perspective on this and your, I want to share that there is a concern that I have anytime that we have a large removal of materials from the public sphere. And especially when it's hard to know what's in the collection really at a high level, it's a collection to support the academics of the institution, the faculty, the students. But granularly, when we interact with a collection through an online catalog, it's a little bit of like a hunting and pecking and searching. Like, how do we know how many collections are in each of the segments? If at a library level, if we're looking at a collection, and I see Adrian nodding a little bit, I think, but if you're trying to evaluate the health of your collection or what's circulated here or there are shelf lists that you can generate. You can have an idea of the size of each segment of the collection, each range of books on a topic. You might know this collection is really important to us as Vermonters because it's on this topic, like maybe the history of agriculture, for example, or craft cooking, or whatever it might be. In this case, there are collections that might be relevant to nursing or healthcare fields. So it's just difficult to know what exactly we're talking about. If these collections are completely duplicate collections of those already at Middlebury College or those already at UVM or those already in other academic institutions of the state, I would be less concerned. Perhaps seeing a shelf list would make me less concerned, seeing a comparison between libraries. But there is something a little bit confusing about the idea that we're going to just leave the books on the shelf and then we won't know where any of them are. And just administratively, I don't believe that what they're talking about is a neighborhood library. It's more of like a giant little free library. I don't know that that's the best use of public dollars. I do want to share that there were some questions about physical collections and online collections that I fielded when I was in front of the Appropriations Committee last week. That I do get the sense that some of that was Senate appropriations, and there were also some, well, really Senate appropriations with asking those types of questions. And I think that the legislators do seem to be feeling around those questions of libraries. Maybe not direct, but adjacent.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Department of Libraries only maybe have a small picture, maybe in a narrow time frame, like a year perhaps, like through the software Clover for interlibrary loans to understand what people have been requesting, but still doesn't answer the question about, is this duplicating? I mean, you can probably search, does, there are multiple lenders, but Clover also doesn't combine that very easily either, depending on cataloging. But the state could get a small picture of what people have requested for the collections at the Vermont state colleges.
I
But
think
that's
that
Yeah.
I
Very
think
tiny picture.
a concern also I've only worked in an academic library as a shelver and as somebody in the interlibrary loan department. Those were, I guess, as a researcher, I was like a student researcher as well. I do think it's important to say that in an academic library, there is a increased, my observations, and they're stale because I was in college back in the 90s, but my observation is that in an academic library, some of these books are quite heavy and you really don't check them out. You photocopy your article and you leave it on the table. And then that's when I would come in and put that really heavy book back on the shelf. Especially, I worked in an art library for a year. Holy moly, those were heavy books, very large format folios. But the it's not the same as when you go to the library and you only take off the book that you're taking with you to take home. The circulation in an academic library may not reflect the usage of the materials. And I'm not aware that they've done comprehensive in-house use statistics. Certainly when I asked that, I did not get a real answer about the in-house use of materials. And it's actually quite hard to do that well. Sometimes in public libraries, I've done that by you put a sticky note in the book and everybody in a certain period of time marks the sticky note. People don't always do that. Another way you can do it is you can take the books on the table and you can check them each in, and that will show that somebody used it. But a lot of times people who are trying to be helpful will reshelve the book even during the period of a survey. And so that it's a very tricky statistic to capture.
And also collecting all the special collections perhaps too, that may have different ways of operating, collecting statistics or checking out materials, so to speak, or having use of them.
Yeah, I think we need to move on to the working plan there, Kathy.
Bruce had his hand up still.
Okay,
Tom.
but the one statement I would like to make, it all summed it up in what I was reading in the paper. There is no plan. So, because there probably is no data to base a plan on, which tells you something. So anyway, Bruce.
Yeah, just one thing for Jeanette, then follow up with Kathy. Maybe she could bring up as part of the working group. And James, thanks for asking those questions. I thought the same things.
Very much.
Golden Dome Book Award. First of all, let me tell a little story. Last week at Middlebury College, the Board of Libraries was mentioned in a large online meeting with one of the political scientists there. He does it every week, Matt Dickinson. And the subject was Jim Douglas, our former governor, who is suing the college, Middlebury, for changing the name of Mead Chapel. And he got a lot of questions, and people were saying, well, this cancel culture, you know, what's this cancel culture? Is it real? And then Jim Douglas goes, well, the Board of Libraries canceled Dorothy Canfield Fisher. And to show you the perils of an open microphone, mine was on, and I just went, oh, jeez. And the political science, Bruce, mute your mic. And fortunately, I know Jim Douglas, and I didn't get a chance to rebut him. And I did write him and said, we didn't cancel Dorothy Canfield Fisher, and I explained the thing to him. But Jeanette, what are we on, our second year or first year? How many years the Golden Dome?
I want to say this might be our third.
Yes.
Wow, time.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and
I
then
think it's 3.
And how do the students vote for the different book awards? Do you know?
The students vote through their school usually, so the teachers kind of organize that, and then they submit their votes through the school. And then the teachers submit their votes here. And I can tell you that the students are okay with the name change. They have not asked. Nobody's asked. It's something that we've done. We did it well. I think we communicated it well, and we've moved on from there.
Yeah, you did a great job. And I just wanted to ask this. Now, Kathy, a general question for you, but you could use this as a lead-in to the working group. First of all, I really get this sense, you've been here a little more than a year now, and I really feel you've got your feet under you and you're learning a lot, and it shows. But, you know, having been away from Vermont for such a long time, although you would come back frequently to swim in Lake Memphremagog or wherever in the wintertime, what is your sense about Vermont and Vermont libraries now that you're back here? Has anything surprised you? You know, I was just wondering how you feel now after a year on, a little more than a year on the job. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to use it. Tom Frank will appreciate this. I'll use that question as a segue into the next agenda item.
Yep.
So I would say in response to your question, Bruce, one thing I can say, now I have visited 50 public libraries in Vermont, and I have visited only 2 academic libraries since being back. But you can, what I have sensed in those visits is the same thing that the working group members keep saying, which is that the one thing we can say is that there's nothing we can say. It feels so disparate. The experience visiting one library, visiting another library, there are small clusters of things that you start to see that are similar. But it's really difficult to generalize about Vermont's public libraries because the circumstances are so locally controlled. This is an instance where local control has, I would say, resulted in very different experiences, community to community, library to library in our state. And it's, I guess that's not surprising in some ways, but it does make it difficult to have a general statement about libraries. I think that some of the things that are impacting the libraries that need the most help are issues of low staffing, of low amounts of local money to support the library. I think that those are some common themes with our small and rural libraries, but not every small and rural library. I was up in Irisburg and they're fundraising and they've got a plan and they're doing things to increase access to the library and make it address physical challenges of the space, had an elevator, and they were doing that before we came out with capital projects funding. So it's really interesting to see the differences community to community. I do think that the state's community, the Vermont Community Index, I think that those communities in the top 25% are the ones that don't have much, the towns that don't have much infrastructure, don't have much of a tax base. I think that those libraries are generally the ones that need the most of like a boost up equity wise to help them to provide high quality library services.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is people are working their tails off. The library staff throughout the state are doing so much to try to provide high quality services, even when they don't have a large book budget, don't have a big programming budget, and may not even, their salaries may be quite low. And so we really see that people are doing this work in a vocational way, that we see people volunteering in addition to the paid hours that they may work, 14 or 15 or 20 hours a week. It's very interesting how disparate things are.
Well, thank you. I mean, that question came to me just last night because you've been here and you've had the advantage of the working group in a way, but there's nothing like the boots on the ground and the personal visits. And there you go. I'll keep quiet. But I'm so glad I've been down to Weston a couple of times. I have a great feel for that little library.
I have a comment.
Okay, Maxie.
Could that have something to do, Kathy, with coming in at a time after COVID, where budgets were somewhat precarious? Maybe you got a different feeling than you would have had before COVID. Could that be?
I think it could be, Maxie, but in a lot of the communities, I mean, I do think that the reason that people had established the working group, and I've only spoken with our former state librarian Broughton for a few moments, but you know, the salary issue that has the funding for salaries, the fundings for collections, those things haven't taken a precipitous fall. Those have been at a low level in rural communities for a long time. So I think that my sense is that it's been sort of a perpetual issue in some of these smaller communities.
Yeah, and some of those smaller communities depend on other libraries. For example, Sheffield here depends on the Copley Library, and they vote every year $850, or at least that's what's up for this year for their annual town meeting. So that's, yeah, so not only commuting or driving to the library, but for access, but the support is very low. So that was in today's Caledonian Record as an advertisement.
Inflation may have had something to do with it too.
Perhaps with the book budgets, you know, you can certainly buy fewer materials now for the same amount of money. If your book budget hasn't increased in a long time, then that could be an inflationary issue. And also if your town isn't increasing its tax revenue, then you may have kind of a flatlined salary for the staff.
This is Deb. One of the most important things that the state does for our small library is the interlibrary loans. I mean, we cannot either buy from space or dollars afford a huge collection, and this allows us the flexibility of offering a huge collection to our patrons, which is really wonderful.
And school libraries face these challenges as well, sometimes being very small and rural and limited also in their budgets. For example, to purchase items, there was a session at the conference just recently about how to stretch your budget dollars and all these scrappy ways to get get books into the hands of kids.
Well, I think if I may, Tom, can I move into the
Sure.
the working
Please.
group update, the
Absolutely.
PowerPoint? I'm hopeful. I see some of you, I know some of you have reviewed it already. I see Bruce has his in his hand, so he's printed it out. I'm not going to read every word of it to you because that would be quite dull, but I will just kind of begin moving through it. And this is a presentation, Maxie, you've already had the full version. The idea to share this with you is really that the establishing language does call out that you all can provide input into the activities of the working group and into that effort that we're doing. So I wanted to just share with you what we've heard so far, because today we don't have a geographic naming thing on the agenda. This seemed like a good time to meet with you about it. I'd be happy to talk with you about it more because I know that there's a lot in here and we'll continue hearing things. But I just want to share with folks kind of an overview of what the working group is to remind you about it and what it's doing and how it's doing it. So the working group was established in 2021 as part of a miscellaneous education bill, Senate 115, Act 66, and the scope is pretty enormous. The working group's charge is to study the status of public school, academic, and special libraries in our state, and to study specifically programming, collections, facilities, technology, staff, cultural diversity and inclusion, access to public programs and services, and emergency preparedness. And, let me just look at that for one more second. The working group is going to submit a report on its studies to the House and Senate committees on education during the next legislative season. Now, the date that is in the current, in the bill as written is that the report is due in the beginning of November of 2023. I did recently go in front of Senate Education and I requested an extension because this is a huge task to write this report and to listen to all of the testimony. And Senate Education wanted to add public safety to the charge of the working group. So I said, well, we're already sort of up against a time issue. Could we have a couple more months? I asked for them to let us submit the report in March, and they said they really wanted the report in time to do something about it in the next legislative session. So they gave me until December 20th. Now, I'm happy to get any extra days, but December 20th is not that many extra days. So it's about an extra 5 or 6 weeks that they were willing to give us. So that has that miscellaneous bill has moved over to the House, and I'll ask for the till March again tomorrow, and they'll give me till December again tomorrow. So the membership of the working group is made up of a diverse group of folks from around the state. All of this information, if you want to see who's there, and I move off the screen too quickly, it's on the working group's webpage, which Josh and April typically help me update, and constant little tiny changes. So I really appreciate the support that our team provides as we move through the efforts of the working group. Just to say, without reading everybody's name, that the membership includes public, school, and academic librarians. It also includes a trustee, Andy Kolovos, from the VLA Trustees and Friends section is there, and he works for the Vermont Folklife Center, which actually is really nice because they do a lot of oral histories, and a lot of the public comments that we receive are really, in a way, part of an oral history that we are collecting. If you ever feel like you want to know what happened at a working group meeting, we are here for you. Our executive assistant takes minutes. The minutes include timestamps, so you can say, well, what did this person say? You know, I see that that the Kellogg Hubbard director is on the agenda. What does she have to say on this topic? And you can go right to the timestamp in the video, which we've posted. So you can actually watch the entire proceedings of the working group. Just like the Board of Libraries, the working group is a public body, and so all of our meetings are compliant with open meeting law. We typically meet on the fourth Friday of every other month, but there are too many things to cover in just the 12 meetings we originally planned, so we have added a number of meetings to the schedule. We usually focus on just one specific topic. We send out email blasts to get people to share their written comments in advance of each meeting. And then during each meeting, we typically have a report by the Department of Libraries, or maybe a local expert or a national expert. And then we have scheduled comments, and then the working group discusses what we've heard. So we've been meeting since September of 2021, before I joined the department. We've heard about programming. A couple key takeaways there is that programming isn't an extra thing we do at the library anymore. Programming is a key service now. And so there are suggestions that libraries incorporate programming into their mission statements, and that programming reflect diversity and the interests of the community, and that that in the future, when we work on public library standards, that it would be a good idea to incorporate maybe a tiered system for the types of programming, how many programs and the types of programming. Often we'll see that people do story time and that's about it, which if you have a big senior community and not many kids, does that really make all of that sense to just focus on early childhood literacy and not think about the needs of the library programming needs of the seniors in the community? So, you know, really reflecting the community that you serve and engaging them in developing programming is important. Collections are a big topic, and at our next meeting on April 21st, I believe, we're going to be focusing on intellectual freedom, but Lauren Kelly, who is our cataloging librarian, is going to do a presentation on collections that she's been working on in cooperation with April Shaw, our interlibrary loan guru, and with Josh Muse, our data guru. So we will have some more information about collections, but we did initially hear about collections. And again, we really think it's important that regardless of how big or small your library is, that you have equal access to information and equal access to collections. And this is where interlibrary loan comes into play, and resource sharing for small libraries. And really thinking about ensuring that community members feel seen and heard and that materials reflect the diversity that we have in that in our communities, and also that local library staff are selecting materials, and that there are local boards that are making policy decisions about collections. We also have heard a lot about ebook and e-audio book procurement and how the models in place for libraries are really negatively impacting library budgets and the access Vermonters have to materials. This is a big area that would require legislation, either in Vermont or nationally, to address, because the models now are just really a for-profit model, and it's so very different from when you buy the one book, it will circulate so many times. You could have a high quality hardcover book that goes out 100 times. Not a children's book, because that would be like ripped to shred by 100 times. But you could keep mending your book, you could keep gluing it back together. But the e-book and e-audio book model is more like you get the license for a couple of years, or maybe 16 or 23 uses, and then you don't have that anymore. You have to rebuy the book. You don't buy the item forever. There's a lot of talk about facilities, and I won't get into this too much right now because we'll do a brief presentation on the capital projects as well. But in a state with many libraries over 100 years of age and many more libraries over 80 years of age, it's difficult to maintain those buildings. And a lot of librarians don't feel, when they come to their position, some have gone to library school, and I can assure you we didn't get any kind of building maintenance degree as part of our library training. And I know trustees are kind of challenged in the same ways. It's sort of like when you become a new homeowner and something goes wrong, and it's a whole new building, except these are often historic buildings and with much bigger and more complex systems. And so there's a lot of training that folks are identifying that they need to help support them in maintaining their library buildings. And then there's a lot of support people need in writing grants to go for money for capital projects. So there's really a high need for financial support to maintain and repair buildings right now. And a lot of the libraries are on a smaller footprint, and some of them are really kind of penned in. And so that can be a challenge for folks too. So it's an interesting time for Vermont's library buildings. One thing that is really nice is when you go to an old building, Tom McMurdo and I yesterday were in Springfield, and they had gotten a modest grant to adapt their children's room to a more modern layout. So they still had the older building, but they were using flexible furnishings so that their collections were on wheels. The bookshelves could be moved around, the bookcases could be moved around to make space for programming in their children's room. So that type of creativity is really what we see in a lot of new library designs, and it's often something we can incorporate into our historic buildings to make the spaces more flexible to accommodate both collections and programming. We also know that community meeting space is at a premium here in Vermont, and that a lot of libraries serve in that community space way. And it's even in statute that libraries can be the community center, which is a little different, I think, from some other states. Technology is a huge issue, and I have to say, Josh is like everybody's favorite librarian because he's so available to them. And sometimes they give testimony just on how much they like some of the consultants. We hear from them very, like on each of the days, they'll come in and say, "Oh, it's the technology day. Let me tell you how great the support I get from Josh is, or the great support I get from Tanya, or the great support that I get from Joy." So it's kind of nice to know that the department is helping people by being there on the phone when their computer breaks, or they have a continuing education need or a trustee question. We have heard from them that they really need in-person, real-time IT support, that they don't quite always know what equipment to buy, and that's tricky for them, and that they would appreciate help with that. We know that despite the fact that lots of people think everybody has access to telephone service and self-service, and everybody's carrying around a device, and everybody has a home computer, and everybody has the internet. The reality in Vermont is that that is simply not true, that the internet at home is not available in many communities. Anybody who's driven to libraries in the state knows that you're out of cell phone reception for most of the day when you're driving around. And we know that just from listening to the news, since I've been back in Vermont, I've learned that if you do a survey online, you're going to miss about 20% of Vermonters who don't have a way to fill out the survey on their cell phone. So they just don't have that type of device. People have limited resources here in many parts of the state. And the library is really serving as their lifeline and their connection to technology and to equipment and to the internet. And a lot of folks may be able to get on the internet, but then they don't know what they're looking at. They don't know if the information is true. They don't know if the news is real. And so there's an information literacy gap that we're seeing in Vermont, just like in the rest of the country. So there is a role for libraries to play in helping people to improve their information literacy, and particularly our school libraries do that, but there's a role for our public libraries to do that as well, especially for people who aren't in grades K to 12. Staffing could probably be the biggest slide with the most things. This is one area that we hear a lot about. We've been hearing a lot of concerns about low wages and sometimes about lack of benefits, particularly in incorporated libraries. Our municipal library staff are typically part of the municipality, which has a larger bunch of folks, but our incorporated libraries may have a very small staff and may not be required to provide benefits because they don't have the threshold that requires benefits be provided to staff. And so there have definitely been times when talking with a library director who works 40 hours a week, when she'll just say, you know, I don't receive any benefits. So my low salary, then I have to pay from that for my health benefits and for my dental benefits. So it's a concern folks have raised. And in part, probably because of the generally low wages and sometimes the lack of benefits, it's hard to retain staff. Not just to retain library directors, but to retain other staff. Although I do have to say there was a library I visited at the very bottom of Vermont, very southern corner of the state, and the library director gave me a wonderful tour, and then she said, "This is my last week. I can't afford to continue working here." And she was going to become an administrative assistant. She was leaving her job as a library director where she was doing such important work. And I'm sure that what she's doing now is important work as well, but it was quite sad to hear her say that she was leaving. Deb, I see your hand is up. Oh, but we can't hear you. You're muted.
Kathy, I just wanted to make a comment about benefits and stuff. We are a municipal library in our town, but our select board in town has decided that, you know, you have to be at a threshold of X number of hours a week to be able to get benefits. And the town, as a matter of fact, the only people in our town who get benefits are the road crew. So, you know,
that can be, yeah.
Yeah, it's not just municipal versus incorporated. It's also, if you're a municipality and you're small, it's highly unlikely that your library people will get benefits.
Yeah, that's a good point. If they're not at that certain threshold of 30 hours or 40 hours or whatever the town has set, that can be an issue. There's a little bit of a debate about the use of volunteers. So many libraries seem to rely on them to provide core library services. And then the larger libraries are saying you're getting something for nothing there. And some of the larger libraries are moving away from using volunteers for those core services because, you know, the true cost of library service is really hidden with the volunteers, and the volunteers time is worth something. They're doing meaningful work. Continuing education continues to be a huge need here in our state. We've heard from folks that it's really tough to afford and to attend library school to get a master's degree, and that the salaries just don't justify getting the degree. And so the Certificate of Public Librarianship continues to be a really valuable resource for library staff who are wanting to move along in their library career and become library directors. It's really practical and it's really hands-on. And so some folks even recommend, even if you have a master's degree, to go through the certificate program and participate in that way. We know that one impact of the COVID-19 pandemic was that the department moved training online, and that has been a real boon to participation in training. We see people from all around the state coming. It's more affordable because people don't have to drive and they don't have to take as much time out of their day to attend the trainings. But we do still hear that people want to connect in person. A lot of folks don't have the ability to attend training on paid time. And so this is something that is of concern for library staff because they're already working and then they're attending training in addition to the time that they spend at work. And we also know that trustees and library board members have some needs that overlap training wise with library staff, but the concerns of the board are a little bit different from the concerns of the director, and the obligations of the board are a little different. So we recognize that they have unique training needs and that the department tries to meet those. The inclusive services topic, if you could only listen to if you could only watch one of the 5-hour meetings, I would recommend you watch the inclusive services topic. Tom Frank was there. He provided testimony that day, and also written. I believe Tom also provided written comments. It was really important to hear about the many ways in which librarians are working to improve and increase access to library services for Vermonters, and how important some of the services we provide here at the Department of Libraries, like the ABLE library services, are to the community. And that we're really just kind of scratching, or we're seeing the tip of the iceberg, and we're developing responses that we'll just need to continually work through to figure out how to engage community members who may have experienced systematic neglect and even mistreatment in libraries, and who feel excluded on the basis of their race or their ethnicity or their gender or their country of national origin. I see Maxie's got a hand up.
Well, that was exactly my question. Systemic neglect and maltreatment, which I find extremely upsetting. So you just elaborated on it, but I mean, how can we help that?
Well, I think that having the conversation, we didn't have many answers. I'm going to be honest. We didn't have many answers, but I think what we know is that we need to have the conversations. Sometimes the library perspective, you think about something like the Dewey Decimal System, and you look at how religion is categorized historically in the libraries, and some religions are treated like they're true, and some religions are treated like they're just like fairy tales. And you look at something as simple as cataloging, or which materials you select for the collection, who you do outreach to, how you change service, or how you prioritize service to underserved communities. Those are the types of things that we'll have to, as a library community, continually look at closely.
Well, I was also thinking about, again, Fletcher Free Library, the homeless.
Yes.
I mean, how do you resolve that? Do you call the police, or do you call social services, or do you just let people be there and then other patrons complain? So it's a huge topic.
Yeah, I think the thinking about the topic of kind of who's using the library and how do we welcome everyone to use the library, and how do we establish some kind of norms for the space and support people in using the library and support them in coming back to the library, even if on a certain day they don't stay in the library. You know, all those types of policies that help support continual access and inclusion of all of the community members, including those who are experiencing homelessness, are really important. And we did hear from the Vermont Coalition on Homelessness, from the head of that group that day, and he had been the Kellogg Hubbard director in the past, so it was very interesting to hear from him. Deb? Oh, wait, we have to unmute you.
No, I don't have my hand up.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'll move to social services, and this is really tightly tied with inclusive services. And social services is also really tied with emergency management, we found out. These topics begin blurring, and it can be a little bit, it's complex. And one thing that we really heard in the social services topic is that if there's an unresolved social service issue, it can easily turn into a public safety issue in a library.
Mhm.
So somebody who has a need that's not being met by society, that can result in some issues that evolve in the library, because the library is a welcoming space where people can come and there's no barrier to entrance and you can stay there. And that libraries are sort of becoming have become a spot that people think of when they think, where can I go that I'll be safe? And sometimes we see behaviors that people might not have thought of in the library, but that we're responding to. And thinking about the library as part of the social safety net in the community, that we're sometimes the only person somebody's talking to all day long. That could be part of the social safety net to support seniors or people with declining health or people experiencing homelessness or children who need support. And that library staff need training to help them to help the communities that they're in. And that we really want to think about welcoming environments and encouraging people to come to the library, and also knowing how to refer folks appropriately who need other help. We are helpers, but we're not the only helpers. And thinking about emergency preparedness, and this is the last thing that I'll share out about right now, is that there's a lot going on in this space, because we're all sort of noting that the weather is changing and that there are challenges that we're facing that our buildings weren't planned for. You know, you didn't think you needed air conditioning in a Vermont library 100 years ago, but holy moly, it's hot out there now. And so thinking about how the changing climate impacts our libraries and our communities, and making sure that we're at the table when people are developing an emergency plan. Some libraries are supporting people in times of extreme weather events by being heating or cooling centers, or just, helping in different ways, even giving people a place to be, and how we anticipate that's going to increase. And then how, if our facilities are planned with resilience in mind, we'll be less buffeted as we experience different climate challenges and weather challenges. Bruce?
Yeah, I had about 3 questions, but I'm going to give you another segue to your next topic. But when you got to facilities, it made me think, right now, the Senate has passed, the House is debating in committee a bill called S5, the Clean Heat Standard. And its intention is to move Vermont to an all-electric economy. And that would include phasing out fuel oils for home heating, propane, natural gas, moving people to heat pumps. They're going to have some standards for commercial buildings. I'm just wondering about how libraries heat themselves. I think you should pay attention to S5, although they're supposed to take 2 years implementing it or coming up with a kind of system of transition. But I can't imagine that I don't know what the new libraries like Worth I guess in South Hero, how they heat their building. I don't know how you heat your building down there in Weston. But if you're on fossil fuels right now, you may find yourselves outliers and forced to undertake some expensive capital projects to retrofit your library. And I don't know how that works with old buildings, of which we have many, and there will be thermal standards. So I just want to put that on your radar, Kathy. I don't know if you were aware of it or if it's been discussed by the working group, but that's something where one hand is going forward and the other hand may not know what's happening. But that's a real possibility going through the legislature. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. And I'm glad that you're here to advise because I know that we talk about energy efficiency and I know that we have done a lot in Vermont, lots of Vermont, I won't say we, many Vermont libraries have been doing things like adding heat pumps, or as they upgrade their heating system, they're moving to something more energy efficient and perhaps less reliant on fossil fuels. But we haven't explicitly, specifically talked about S5, and I think that it is a good idea to do so because, not just libraries, but any municipal building could be in this same situation. And I'm curious what S5 says about that and how local municipalities are responding in general. And half the public libraries are municipal and then the other half are not. I know that there's some funding to help people to kind of go green or to be more energy efficient, but this does seem like it could significantly impact public libraries and the bottom line of their facilities.
I don't know how they've discussed municipal buildings, large buildings and things like that. They've mostly paid attention to what it's going to mean for Vermont homeowners, particularly the 60% of Vermonters, I guess, who are on fuel oil. But I just thought about libraries, so maybe somebody in the working group could check in with, it originated in the Senate and the Natural Resources and Energy Committee. Thanks.
Thank you. So just quickly, the next meeting is on the topic of intellectual freedom. And then there will be a meeting that's on April 21st. And then in May, we'll move to library structures and organizations. The working group, not the department, is going to work with a consultant on a staffing and salary survey. The working group decided that they wanted to use their $12,000 appropriation to support that because it's a very important topic to the working group members. And then in anticipation that public safety will be added to our charge by the legislature through this revision to the miscellaneous bill, we are putting public safety as an additional meeting in August, and then we'll have to just buckle down and write reports. Right now, the department staff have contributed summaries of the reports that they delivered to the working group. The working group members have each been assigned a specific topic that they will take the lead on writing based on the testimony that was heard, the public comments, the written comments that we received. And those pieces will form the body of the report with the recommendations.
So Kathy, so you're saying, so the members have stepped up and are going to have to write the different pieces, right? So
they've been drafted. Yes, the members. I brought them into. I really I asked for help, and they did I had them do a survey and see what they were interested in writing, and it worked out pretty nicely that everybody's taking the lead on something, which is great. Maxie's got her hand up.
I have a general question of Kathy. Do you find the working group helpful? Has it become too big, sort of not easily managed group? And can some of the results, for instance, of the VLA conference or the surveys that are going on right now, can they be used to help the working group? It seems you already have a lot of the answers.
Yeah, I want to be diplomatic about this as I can. I would say if somebody came to me in the future, if a legislator came to me in the future and said, we'd like to help the Department of Libraries and we'd like to help libraries throughout the state, I would not recommend the formation of a working group with a charge as broad as this one.
Mhm.
The scope is unwieldy.
Mhm.
We don't have the capacity to dive deep into things. The staff, the staff of the Department of Libraries are really stepping up and helping, but it would be very challenging, I think, for me to, as the working group chair, to assign research topics to each of the working group members and have them come back and share out and to feel confident that they really got the scope of things. We've tried to engage them a little bit in helping us to solicit testimony, and even that gets clunky. It probably would have been, I think that the department could have studied this without a formal working group, without the formation of a public body, and the department could have written a report, and that would have been as effective, probably. This seems very unwieldy.
So you know how it started. A simple conversation with another librarian on the way to a far away library. I can't remember where. And we just started to talk. And then Ruth Hardy got involved. But I just really have a feeling that it's become too unwieldy. And how can we help board?
Well, I think, like all big projects, there's a way through it and we'll get there. I know it seems a little like when I just brought you through all of that and then you think to yourself, there are still like 3 or 4 more topics. Like it's just, and yet it will come to an end. We will have a report. I think one thing that we've done, and a conversation I had with Andy Kolovos, one of the board members, has, or one of the working group members, actually helped me a little bit. He said, well, with a scope this big and a timeline like this, we can't possibly be expected to go deep into each of these topics. We can make general recommendations. We can take the temperature on the topics, but we can't probably solve them. So it could be that there are follow-up steps that are recommended, and I would recommend that they be farmed out to the Vermont Library Association, School Library Association, the department, academic libraries. I don't think all of the work that will come of this has to be the work of the department. I think that some of the work of this may actually belong to other organizations. If we're thinking about salary advocacy, for example, that's not the work of the department. So I think that there will be some concrete takeaways, but then there may also be some areas where, we know something is of concern and we might want to look at that more later. And that's the recommendation, that we don't have a solution for it, given that we couldn't delve deep because of the broad scope.
Well, just also, Ruth Hardy's original draft was for 1 year. And she had to be talked into extending it. And then, of course, there was no funding for it initially. And I think we got $5,000.
It ended up with 12,000, but that basically so I've been working with Lucy Fortier, our contracts and grants administrator, to try to find a consultant who will do the survey of just public library staffing and salaries. And it's been hard to get somebody to come in to get bids that would actually be below the $12,000 we had. The group seems to want study after study after study, survey after survey after survey, but there's not funding for those to be professionally done. And they're too important to just have us cobble them into our regular workflow here in the department, and when they're on topics we're not used to doing surveys on.
Oh, you can be diplomatic when you write the report, but I think you also should be educational, or another word, blunt, as to the limitations and what you couldn't do. And I think that's as important for the readers in the legislature to learn as it is to learn about facilities or collections or things like that, because there's more to learn, there's more to be aware of, and you couldn't do in the scope of time, the finances and the nature of the group. So that's one recommendation I have, be somewhat blunt in a nice way.
And I'll say one other thing. I was reading an article way back when, Allegheny Airlines or whatever, an article, when you know that good enough is enough, and the example they gave in the Declaration of Independence in the National Archives, there are 3 errors that the scribe corrected with a little caret and wrote it in. It was good enough. Didn't have to be perfect. It had to be thorough, but at a certain point, you can do what you can do, and that's it.
Yeah, we won't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We will, yeah. Tom, should we move to the capital projects quickly?
Absolutely, yes.
We can never know in the department if we're going to get a flurry of geographic naming. So I didn't want to wait. So this is a really meaty meeting. And Jeanette Schaefer is going to join me for this Public Library Capital Projects grants. We'll move through it pretty quickly so that we can take your questions. I just want to be sure that you're all aware of our 2 capital projects funding sources. We've been talking for a long time about the 16.4 million US Treasury capital project funds for libraries. That is part of the state ARPA money that was approved in last year's budget by the legislature. And that is the funding source that is really dedicated to COVID response. Being ARPA money, it's laser focused on COVID responses and making sure that people have access to high-speed internet to directly enable them to work, go to school, and interact with their healthcare providers from their local public libraries. We submitted materials for that to Treasury well before their deadline last September, and we just heard from them recently at the same time everything else was going on. In the end of March, we heard from them that they had some questions. So we got back to them with answers, and we're waiting for approval of that proposed use of that $16.4 million still. But we're very hopeful that we will receive that funding that is really focused on maintaining our libraries and ensuring that people have high-speed internet access. We knew that there was a lot of need out there, and so the department applied through the congressionally directed spending process. The department applied for $10 million in HUD funding that is being called the Public Facilities Preservation Initiative grants. These are grants that are intended to help libraries in small rural communities to address their needs to repair their buildings and to keep them functioning as libraries and community meeting spaces. And this is really particularly focused on small rural libraries, particularly in economically depressed areas. HUD has actually given us this hugely wonderful gift. They have established that August 31st, 2031 is the end date of the period of performance for the $10 million Public Facilities Preservation Initiative grants. That gives us a little bit of breathing space. That is a really extensive timeline. The ARPA funding does not have as generous of a timeline. That timeline continues to be December 31st, 2026, and we don't anticipate that they will push that out right now, but we'll see. It's a little frustrating because we don't have approval, so we can't really get started with that one with much confidence, and then it's the one with a shorter timeline to complete, but we will figure it out. We anticipate that the applications are going to be really asking some questions about, does your project help you to provide internet access for at least 5 years into the future when we're focusing on seeing if projects are eligible for the Treasury funding. And that the HUD grant funding is really going to focus in on, is your library small, and is your library serving a small rural community? We right now are using a definition of rural that is kind of in response to the Census Bureau's updates. The Census Bureau has said that urban areas have populations of more than 50,000 and that urban clusters have populations of more than 5,000 and have fewer than 2,000 housing units. I'm sorry, the urban populations have more than 2,000 housing units. So we're sort of thinking that the guidance we receive from the federal government will define rural as the opposite of urban. And so we're just going to go ultimately with the HUD definitions. And we're working right now on the capital projects application. At the moment, we have a needs assessment open. We're hoping that every library and every public library in Vermont will complete it. We extended the deadline to April 15th. We've had many people successfully use the application, the needs assessment to let us know what their needs are. We're hoping that we're going to gather with this needs assessment information that will be helpful to us as we build out the 2 grant programs. And help us to understand where libraries are in the planning process right now. Some are ready to break ground tomorrow and some haven't even started. And so we're really wanting to find out from everyone where they are in that process. And in the short term, as I said, we're going to use the needs assessment to develop the 2 federal capital grants projects that we're going to administer. But it's also a helpful tool for us to see what future funding and resources may be needed. And this needs assessment survey data can be shared with a working group to supplement what we know about library facilities. And if a library has no plans to do anything with capital projects, of course, they don't need to fill out a needs assessment. But if they do have any future plans, we do encourage them to fill it out just so that we understand what the whole scope of needs are in Vermont. I doubt we're going to see 146 libraries respond. I think right now, I have a sticky note. We have 63 needs assessments that have been successfully completed so far. And we've been fielding questions about them. So if you or anyone you know has questions about the needs assessment, please just reach out to us and we will provide feedback on how to use the needs assessment survey tool. We're really trying to make sure people know that this is not the grant application. A grant application will be coming in the future, probably in the fall. And I think actually, instead of having Jeanette come on, I think that's probably all that we need to share with you all right now, but she can help me to field questions. Deb. Oh, you're muted.
I actually sent an email to Tom and the board this morning because I have been working on the needs assessment and found the actual form to fill out online incredibly difficult. It may be my age. I'm delighted that you've actually already gotten 63 so far. I would imagine it'd be interesting to check the age of the people who submitted those. Maybe they're much more familiar with me. But the thing that was really troublesome to me was that the needs assessment that I printed out, the Word document, was actually different in a few ways than the actual online application. There was an additional question that was asked on the online application that wasn't asked in the needs assessment. And so as I'm filling it out and I get to that question, I go like, oh my gosh, I don't know that question answer. And then I had to stop. And so I didn't finish the application and therefore my time timed out and I had to scrap everything that I'd already done and redo it. So it was just a little frustrating.
I'm sorry for that experience. Jeanette is going to check into that we work with a company called NIC, NIC. It's not a human, but it's a vendor that the state works with, and we have this service that they will host our surveys in this way, and it is sometimes pretty clunky. And it sounds like we should quickly get if there is this extra question. I saw your email but didn't have a chance to read it yet, Deb. But I forwarded it to Jeanette so that she can look into the question issue. We can post an updated PDF if there is a survey difference that evolved. We'll look into what's going on with that, because we thought we had posted the final survey. Not It sounds like there's an extra question now, though, so we'll check on what's happened with that. But it is a little bit clunky as far as the size of the boxes and what you can see, and the fact that you can't come back and log in again and finish it. And then once it's gone, it's like it's with us, like you can't go back and edit it. So some libraries are saying, well, now that we understand you really want to know the whole need, we focused really narrowly on what we thought would get the grant money. So now some libraries are even filling it out twice, which is a little bit, it's frustrating for us too. We will look and see if there's another platform we could use, like the Word forms instead of NIC, if that would still be acceptable with this type of data. The NIC platform is a very secure platform, and it meets the state's requirements, and it's free to us, these are all some of the reasons we use it, but it's not elegant, Deb. It's not an elegant form. But I'll have Jeanette. Jeanette's been great at getting back to people quickly with answers. So she and I will look at your comments, and if we can help in any way, we will.
Thank you.
I think probably, Deb, we should have you test our form for the applications ahead of time too. Maybe you're a good tester for us.
What's interesting about that is that you couldn't go and look at the form ahead of time, because you can't go through the form unless you fill out all the answers, which takes a long time anyway. But I filled out forms like that for the IRS when I filed for a 501c3 application. And I'm not suggesting you use an IRS form, but it was really easy to use.
That's terrible. We're worse than the IRS. We're
That
competing
is
with them
terrible.
because it's all due on the 15th of April. Holy moly. The other thing I want to mention is, while we're saying to people, get it in by the 15th of April, if they don't submit, we'll still, I believe that we're going to need this information from them as something to combine with their grant application. So a library that misses the needs assessment is probably going to need to still give us the information at a later date. So we're likely to just leave the form up for longer for folks, but we want to get the data all at once so we can start our next work with it, which is kind of building out the different buckets of how each of the two grants will operate. Right now, it feels a little bit mysterious what we're going to find. It's like a strange cloud of information is out there somewhere in the world, and we have to kind of pull it down into spreadsheets and start. I imagined sitting in a room with pieces of giant sticky notes and marking how many have this type of project, how many have that type of project. It's almost difficult for me to get my brain around what will happen next, but it should be an exciting time for us, maybe with markers and sticky notes. Really high-tech systems that I like to implement. Josh, I need your help. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, any other questions on this area?
Oh, can I share just one quick thing too?
Sure, because 1201, which is okay, but
okay,
we keep going.
I just want to share that in addition to the regular library visits, I mentioned that yesterday Tom and I were out on the ARPA tour. We have gone to a number of counties in the state as part of this big outreach effort. We started out in the Northeast Kingdom back in, oh my gosh, it was like November maybe. So we've been to the Northeast Kingdom. We did those 3 counties together. We have been to Orange County, to Windsor County, to Windham County, to Bennington and Rutland counties. We've really been trying to get the word out to the communities that have been less quick to apply for ARPA money. The state knows that Chittenden County has sort of the initial ARPA money that's gone out. Chittenden County's been like all over it because they have the capacity in the larger cities and towns to get their applications in. And they also have more they're more clued into what the different opportunities are. So at these different stops on the ARPA tour, basically we go and present along with different folks from different agencies. So people from ACCD are there, people from emergency management are there, Deputy Secretary of Administration Doug Farnham is there, and he provides all the answers. Like whatever question people ask, Doug provides the answers. I don't know how he does it because he's sort of got the master view. So we let him do cleanup. We have Buildings and General Services Commissioner Jennifer Fitch is there, and she talks about the MERP program, which our municipal libraries can participate in to get their buildings checked for energy efficiency. And Bruce, maybe that's one way that that the state could be thinking about, the clean heat standard and looking at what systems they have. So it's been really a great opportunity, not just to talk with individual library directors, but to really share out in this room filled with people from the municipalities, I can't even speak, municipal government, from regional planning groups. We have been really spreading the word about what we're doing with these grant opportunities, and we get a lot of great questions during it. It sort of shows, I think it shows the administration and shows everyone sort of that the library is important to people in the community. Sometimes the first question asked will be by someone who's a library trustee or a director of a library. So it's sort of nice to be at the table and presenting out with the other folks from the other agencies. And I think that it's a good way to really share the news about these projects that people have the opportunities to participate in, so that we can hopefully distribute these funds really broadly and not just have them all land at the wealthiest libraries in the communities with the most resources to go for the grant money.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. And everybody else here, any last comments by anybody? If not, our next
Oh, wait,
meeting
Linda's
is.
got,
Oh,
Linda's
Linda.
got.
Yeah, Linda.
Sorry, I was trying to, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Gotcha.
I wonder if, as a board, we want to make a statement about the college and university libraries, as James brought up much earlier in the conversation. I wonder if maybe that can be a topic at our next meeting, if we feel that we need to make some statement about that.
You can definitely put it on the agenda, to discuss it. That'd be definitely. And then people can come up with ideas between now and then. You can definitely do that if we're going to do it as a board, because it wasn't on the agenda, so we'll have to put it on the agenda.
The next meeting takes place in July.
Which is after the deadline, July 1st.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Kathy. That was your thought.
I just share the facts. Yeah.
Oh.
After the deadline for what, Adrian?
The switch over to the Vermont State University is the switch over for the libraries and the university is July 1st. So we're meeting afterwards.
Yep. Okay.
Oh, the switch over to the
model, the non-planned model,
the non-planned model
plan.
When they all start as the Vermont University will start as of July 1st, right?
Correct. To my understanding.
Well,
Well,
As the secretary, I would just suggest if you wanted to have an additional meeting, you could have a special meeting.
yeah.
I don't know if is there appetite for doing that among Bruce. You expressed some support for what James was saying. Is there other support for the board making a statement in response to the legislative decision?
Well, not is it the legislative
Right. Sorry.
decision, or it's the library, it's the board, the chancellor decision.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of absurd decision. So I would be for, yes.
I would imagine you could also invite them to speak to you directly because I can't represent their
Right.
plan.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, I don't think there is no plan. So the question is at our next board meeting I mean, it doesn't have to be done, but July 1st, they're going to make their meetings. I don't think they've emptied the libraries yet, have they?
There are a
There's
bunch
a-
of shrugs going on right now, Tom. I just realized I should describe the shrugging because
Okay, the
you
shrugging,
couldn't see
yeah.
it.
Don't know.
Well,
They
that's
don't know.
That's the problem, because Kathy and Adrian, the non-planned plan, it sounds like it's in flux. The other question about it is not only a critique of what they originally planned to do, is what would we recommend? And it's
Right.
difficult to recommend something when you don't know exactly what they're doing at this point. I can see having digital access to books, but we had a meeting at Champlain College, which is very digitally oriented, but I think they still have 50,000 print volumes in their library. And so I have no clue other than lamentation for their original plan as to what the heck they're going to do and how we would contribute to either raising Kane or making a recommendation. That's a hard thing.
Maxie has her
Kath-
hand up.
You may have already answered that, but I can't remember. Did you ask them what their plans are? Or should we ask them what their plans are?
I have asked for written plans that are more detailed, and I have not received them. I've been directed to the FAQ.
Oh,
Right. And everything
But
I've sent
you
in
would
the
have to
paper,
decide
there
if
are
you
none.
should ask them. That I can't
Yeah.
weigh in on that.
Yeah, and
maybe
I don't know if we'd want to hold a special meeting.
we
Then
don't need a meeting for that. We can just
we
kind
could
of,
ask them at our next scheduled meeting if they wish to attend, if we want to put it on the agenda.
So would you like to wait till the July meeting, or do you want to add a special meeting prior to July to your schedule?
could one just have a 1 hour virtual meeting?
Yes, we could. Yeah, we can have a special meeting.
I would recommend we start it at 10 o'clock, hold it on that you all convene at your normal Tuesday at 10 o'clock time and just not put an end time on the meeting.
Yeah, okay.
That gives you the most
You're saying
flexibility
in
of your
July,
conversation.
you're saying not a special meeting?
Oh,
You're
no,
just
I'm saying if you schedule a special meeting, I would
Okay.
recommend just put a start time and not an
A
end
start
time.
time at
That's in
10
keeping
o'clock,
with the
right.
bylaws.
Yeah,
Okay.
which we did before, right? Okay,
But-
so we could do that. This is April, May, June. It'd have to be late May, early June. And you're saying the second Tuesday in May or the second Tuesday in June? Kathy? What's your
Yeah, the
recommendation?
second Tuesday in May is the 9th.
9th, okay.
But we have to warn the meeting 30 days in advance, don't we?
48,
No,
isn't it?
it's
It
not
was
30.
48.
It's just 48 hours.
just
We
48.
can,
Oh,
we could
48
warn the
hours.
meeting this month.
Well, could I ask a question?
Sure.
So do we have to, hear me out, to have an impact earlier in the process, because we don't know what's going to happen by May or June, should we take a vote to have a special meeting? Should we name what we want to have that special meeting about? And then should we release a press release? That would say the State Board of Libraries is going to have a special meeting on such and such a date because they're concerned about the situation with the libraries at the Vermont State Colleges. They feel a need to have more information and whatever it is, that would have at least some value, at least raising the administration. We might get their attention a bit, and we might also get the attention of people who have weighed in on this. There have been a lot of letters and columns, and VT Digger, I know one of our staff members submitted an excellent one a month or two ago. So that's another thing. That's sort of a tactic, strategic tactic or whatever. And I don't even know if we can vote on that stuff because we haven't put it on the agenda. I just don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it as a board. Individual members can, by the way, can make letters to the editor and everything. And
Okay.
you can say you're a member, Vermont Board of Libraries, but just can't do it as the Vermont Board of Libraries says
Unless,
that.
yeah, unless there's the meeting and the draft language is agreed to by the board, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's in Pandora's box.
Yeah, it really is dangerous to do that.
Yeah. And then
Like
some
I
of
said,
us, yeah, well, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just saying, we can have a special meeting if you want, and that's be the only thing on the agenda, and just ask them, you know, start it at 10, and then just invite, just to give, so that the Vermont Board of Libraries has some information and bring us update on what you're doing. And they might not say, no, we're not going to do there. And then we can have a meeting and decide what we want to do.
As a related side note, the St. Johnsbury Athenaeum staff and trustees put out a statement. So I have been somewhat involved with a different capacity.
And you're private, so that's
Yep.
you're
That's
private, and also you have Linden Estate right there.
Yeah, it was responding to that,
Yeah.
the offer of books and we have no storage, that sort of thing, and also the concerns about interlibrary loan, that reciprocal agreements that's in the internet ILL code statewide.
Yeah, so I would say we could hold a meeting starting the second Tuesday in June at 10 o'clock to deal with this, and we can invite the chancellor or spokesperson.
Do you want to do the second Tuesday in May, which is May 9th, or the second Tuesday in June, which is June 13th?
Probably May.
Yeah, let's see if everybody checks their calendars and all that. Why don't we say May? Why don't we say May 9th, if that's okay?
Yeah.
And then if there are problems, let Kathy or me know. And the alternative would be June 9th.
13th, I think.
Well, yeah, the June 13th, right. Whatever the second Tuesday in June is. Yeah.
This is Deb. Can I just, I'm just raising a question, which is when I think of what the role of the Vermont Department of Libraries Board is, that's us.
Mhm.
You know, we're advisory to the state librarian.
Mm-hmm.
So does it seem like we make statements like this on our own, or do we wait for like a request from the state librarian to deal with this question, or what?
Well, yeah, that's a whole question because yes, we're independent, but we're a board to advise the state librarian and not to advise anybody else. That's always my concern about it.
And
Yep, speak.
I'm not sure what I could do if you advised me.
You can't. Right, you can't.
Like that,
you can't.
it's not in my purview to do something, so that's not a thing
Right.
I can solicit your advice on.
Right,
It's a
yeah.
little bit,
Maybe it's just a fact finding for us because nobody seems to know what's going on.
well, let
Well,
me think about this. Hang on for 1 second. Think
Yeah.
of this. It's difficult to understand the impacts on statewide library services. So that could be that the request for the plan could be, and the request to hear from them with more detail could be your,
Yeah. And
so
I
that
agree,
you
not-
can advise
yeah.
me on how the plan will impact and mitigation strategies we could utilize.
Right, yeah, because
Maybe.
it's interlibrary loans and all of that. Yeah, that seems to be that's our purview to advise you, basically. And we need more information. And they might look at us as the board, 5, 7 of us or whatever, and we're sort of semi-independent what we can do, but we advise you, and then we need that information. What are you planning on doing? So we can say, well, we need to, and then also the plan for the state, the working plan. Do they have to do interlibrary sharing, and can they do that? Stay in there, even if they're getting rid of books or something.
Well, I think that's our decision though, because if they're not loaning, then the community guidelines for interlibrary loan are, if you loan a book, you'll get a book. If you loan CDs, you'll get CDs. If you'll.
The last time I heard, they were
Yeah.
they backed off a little bit, and they're keeping books, and they're not getting rid of all of them.
But they're not, I don't know that they're loaning materials, so I don't think that they will
Well-
be able to be in it still.
Well,
in
that's what
interlibrary
we,
loan.
yeah, and that's
And
what
the
we need to
staff
ask them.
member, there's only going to be one interlibrary loan staff member, so they may not be able to have the capacity to serve the way that they had prior. But that could be part of the information fact finding.
But that's
What are
part of
the
the that's
staff
what I'm thinking. That's just, we
changing?
need to know that information, and hopefully by May 9th, they'll have some more information on what they're doing and the plan, so we can advise the state on what to do.
So we're asking for a meeting, which will be allowing us to learn more about what their plans are and how those plans will affect public libraries in Vermont.
Right. Not how they're going to college, but how they're going to, and our relationship to the college libraries.
I think that perhaps it's that the charge of the department is statewide library includes this statewide library services and resource sharing. And so the board is asking for more information from the state college system about their plans so that the department can respond to potential impacts and you can advise on our response.
Yes.
Correct. Yes. Perfect.
Good.
Bruce, you're muted.
I'm thinking other questions come up too, that some things just sort of strike me as we were talking. Who would we direct those to? You, Catherine? And we might not even all agree on exactly how we feel about the idea of getting rid of books. So it seems like we'd have to figure out some kind of statements. I know we agree on a lot of things, exactly how we would shape some kind of statement. Just seems like we should have some kind of response. But I'm reminded of it back in Virginia, people trying to, when William Faulkner's house was getting ready to fall into disrepair, they were actually trying to figure out, should they save the house, or which manuscript should they tear down the wall where he diagrammed one of his books, which of his first editions do they need to really keep? Now we look back, who decides exactly what to keep and what not to keep? And and can predict actually into the future as to what is going to be very important to have as a first edition in physical form. So to me, one of the questions that just popped up is, if some people were actually trying to get rid of William Faulkner's first editions, I sure would like to know, who is the person, the czar or something, or the individuals, or the group
that's
who
why you're a
decides
very
what's-
very important person to have on this. So
Yeah.
I might ask for a committee with you and a couple of others that to form the questions.
I would recommend not forming a committee, but
Okay.
that
That's
you,
right. It's
Tom,
not a committee, right? It's a
that maybe individual board of library members could share their ideas for questions with Tom, and then Tom collates
I
them.
can send, and relate them to you. Yes. Okay. No committee on this, right? That gets.
Yeah. I do want to share that two thoughts. So the two thoughts I have are, one, that the legislature has been holding, I mean, they are a public body and they have been holding meetings. And so people with concerns about this topic could write to Senate Education or House Education. Those are the two bodies that seem to be bringing people in, just as an informational piece. But I also want to share that it looks like the Board of Trustees is having, the Vermont State College's Board of Trustees is having a meeting on this topic this evening that I've just been made aware of by a member of the department staff. And there is public comment during this. So people with specific concerns could address, that is the public body that governs these decisions. So I think the sphere of influence of the Board of Libraries over this decision, it's really in the advising of the state's Department of Libraries in our response to the impacts. It's a little bit of a twisty, narrow path. There are some other bodies that already exist that that may be places that individuals who are members of the board or just the library community in general may wish to attend the meetings or share comments.
There you go, James. There you go, Adrian.
And also, I'm sorry, one more
information.
thing. Also, if there are concerns that you have about, if any of you as members of the library community and members of the public, if any of you wish to participate in any way in writing written comments on any of the topics of the working group, including the topic of intellectual freedom, James, I say that because some of what you were raising seems in that vein. Those are you are not precluded from participating in the working group because of your participation in the board. In fact, you are encouraged to participate in the working group. So I just want to share that there are some avenues out there for some of the concerns, and you all have experience to contribute on any of the topics of the working group.
Thank you.
So we have
Bruce
them. So maybe if
Bruce. Yeah, just quickly. I mean, because I was wondering when we would warn it, and you put down a topic. If do you warn it? Also put a press release out that would appear in Digger and stuff like this. The other, well, wait a minute, just let me finish. I mean, the value is if people feel they haven't had a voice, if we had a meeting just like this, it could be an outlet for people to have a voice. But now that I learned that the trustees are having a meeting, and I presume it will be an open meeting and possibly held online, that certainly gives an opportunity for members of the public to weigh in. It's difficult to weigh in with the legislature. Okay, you can submit testimony, written testimony. I don't know how many of the members read it, but to testify before a legislative committee, you have to be what they say allowed in the room. They just don't. It's not a process like this where you can sit there and raise your hand. If you're not allowed in the room, you can watch it on YouTube live. So I think if the trustees are doing this and there is an opportunity for speak, maybe we don't need to have a meeting. because, again, what are we going to do? And that's, it's just a tenuous situation that's rapidly evolving. And we can schedule a meeting, and can we then cancel it before having it if we find there's no need for it?
I'm saying we schedule it for the 9th. We don't have to warn it until 48 hours in advance or a couple of days, but so we can still think about it. As I said, the meeting, Kathy said the meeting's tonight with the library, not the library, the college board of trustees. So I assume they're doing it online as well, right, Kathy? Do you know? You just got the information, right?
I shared the information. If you click on the first link, you will get the information I shared in the second link. So if you click on the first link, it will open up a PDF that indicates that there's a public comment sign up. If you want to Bruce's point, if somebody wanted to actually comment, then they would need to sign up to comment, is my impression. Okay. And then there's also an email address that's listed in the agenda. This information I put in the second chat message, because Tom, I know that you can't always use PDFs with your PDF reader.
Should be able to.
But the first link in the PDF is the one to sign up to comment.
So I think we can schedule a meeting, but if the events turn out to say, hey, we don't need the meeting.
We don't need the meeting, right?
And we don't warn it.
Yeah.
And I'll leave
we don't warn it. That's what I'm saying. Okay.
I
schedule it for the 9th, where everybody, the 9th is the meeting, and then we'll, if we decide not to have it, we, can communicate to Kathy and all that. Don't need it, or to me, and we don't warn it, no later than 48 hours before, if we have it. And if we don't have it, we don't have it. And Kathy's sending the information, so there's the board meeting tonight, and we might not need it. And communicate to Kathy what's happening, because we can't work together too much. So, okay, anything else? Because I do need to have to go, because I got another thing scheduled.
My mic was off. I want to just pause for 1 second. I would ask Tom, I really, as a member of AOA, our department's within the Agency of Administration. AOA does not have an opinion on this. There's not a formal position. I really can't, I don't feel super comfortable gathering your questions and comments.
Okay.
I would prefer that somebody else take the lead with that.
Send them to me.
If we could, because when we do a warning of a public meeting, we just have some logistical things behind the scenes. I'd appreciate knowing if you plan to meet by May 1st, so that Gina and I can work on noticing.
Sounds fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
May 1st, the deadline to either a go, as they say, a go or no go.
Great.
We have a go, Houston.
Okay.
By May 1st, and then send any questions you want to ask, which if we don't ask them then, will still be good questions to ask in July. We might have some other answers anyway. So, okay. Anything else? Because we're running overtime here and people have other things scheduled. Do I have a motion to adjourn? That's usually me, but I'm chair, so I can't do it.
This is Bruce. I move that we adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, yep, non-debatable motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Can stay all day? No? Well, anyway, I think it's passed. I thank you all for joining. And once again, Kathy has the information that you get there to attend that meeting this evening if you want. I got another board meeting I got to go to tonight. But yeah, that's James. That would be fantastic if you could go, and Adrian.
I'm going to definitely try to make. What's the time of it?
I guess Kathy.
7 o'clock.
7
o'clock. Okay, so it's 7 o'clock.
I'm going to try my best to make it.
And it'll be in the link there. Okay.